सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवम्। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्. So after explaining to us the process of Shravana Manana, now we are in the process of Nididhyasana, and that too the higher level of samadhis. Brahmatmana samsṛtiḥ is the topic going on. As per the second verse, I hope we all remember. Jantunam narajanma durlabham atah pumstvam tato viprata tasmat vaidika dharma marga parata vidvatvam asmat param atmanatmanam atmanatma vivechanam swanubhavah. So Shravana Manana Nididhyasana topics are over. Brahmatmana samsṛtiḥ, now the higher level of samadhis. That is the topic going on. Right? The second last step, we can say. And then after that mukti will be discussed. So in that topic also, we saw how Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji, who is also a guru here, has initially explained to us the role of vasanas. Right? Unless and until all the negative tendencies, vasanas are removed, realization is not possible. And then he has gone into the topic of ahaṃkāre, where he is explaining to us the importance of destroying the identification with this ahaṃkāre. Right? The world is not to be destroyed. The body, mind, intellect is not to be destroyed. But all these things are connected to me through this ahaṃkāre. It is the ahaṃkāre which identifies with body, mind, intellect and says that this is me. Thus we have the relationship with the rest of the world. So what we have to do is just disassociate ourselves from this ahaṃkāre, saying that yeah, you continue to have all these things to yourself. I am not you. That is what Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji is explaining here. We saw in the 4 verses that we were seeing in the last session, Yahava pure saha aham iti pratitah, verse number 301. Buddhya prakliptastamasa mudhaya. What is this ahaṃkāre? Ahaṃkāre is that pure, in the city of body, yaha saha aham iti pratitah. that which appears to be identifying, saying that this is me. Buddhya prakliptastamasa atimūdhaya. How this ahaṃkāra has come about? What are all the factors associated with its birth? Atimūdhaya, tamasa. Tamas, which is extremely deluding in nature, buddhya. In that mind which is extremely tamasic, the reflection of consciousness has happened, and that is where that ahaṃkāra is born. Tasya eva, of that alone, nisheshataya vinashe, on the total destruction of that alone, of that ahaṃkāra, ego alone, brahmatma bhavaha pratibandha shunyaha. We experience Brahma Atma Bhava, the experience of that Supreme Brahman being me, pratibandha shunyaha, without any obstacle. Till the time this ahaṃkāra is there, we will experience obstacle in the experience of Supreme Brahman. How much ever we try saying that I am Brahman, but that I will remain as ahaṃkāra unless even the last traces of ahaṃkāra still persist. Till that time, that Brahmatma Bhava is not total, is not totally unobstructed. That is what Bhagavan says here. Then he gives one metaphor we have seen, Brahmananda Nidhihi. Consider this bliss of the Brahman, bliss of the Supreme Reality as the treasure. Now that treasure is guarded, wrapped by this snake. The snake is compared with ahaṃkāra, which is how Mahabalavata ahaṃkāra ghora ahina, by a great terrible snake of ahaṃkāra, which has three hoods, three faces. Gunamayaihi, Chandaihi, Tribhihi, Mastakaihi. And these three hoods, the three heads of ahaṃkāra are the three gunas. It takes different forms. Sometimes it appears to be sattvic jiva, sometimes rajasic jiva, sometimes tamasic jiva. They are all three different faces of the same ahaṃkāra. Initially we will try to be sattvic. We don't want to be rajasic or tamasic, but remember we are still in one of the hoods of the same ahaṃkāra. So using these three hoods, he what does he do? Samveshta atmani rakshate. It keeps the treasure hidden. Now if we want to reach the treasure and get it, what is the way? Vijñānakhya mahasina, by the great sword of Vijnana, experience. Jnana, knowledge. Vijnana, Vishesha Jnana is that experiential knowledge. By this knowledge, what will happen? Vichhidya shirashatrayam. First we have to destroy the three hoods of the ahaṃkāra, of the snake, which is compared with ego. And then nirmulya ahim imam. Imam ahim nirmulya. And then don't leave the rest of the snake also. That also you destroy. Sukhakaram nidhim dhiraha anubhoktum kshamaha bhavati. Then the dhira purusha, then that wise person who has done this becomes capable, becomes fit for experiencing the bliss of the self, which is treasure. Right? Very beautifully through extended metaphor, Shankaracharya has explained to us that unless and until these three hoods of ahaṃkāra are destroyed, and then the ahaṃkāra also, rest of it is also destroyed, till then nidhi, the main treasure of bliss of the self, is not experienced, is not attained. Right? That's what he confirms. Yavadva yat kinchit vishadosha spurtihi asti cheddehe. As long as in the body there is even a bit of poison by the snake bite. Which snake? Ahaṃkāra, the same snake of ahaṃkāra has bitten us. As long as that, now here of course it's a different example, but you see how he has connected it still, and says that as long as even a bit of poison remains in the body, katham arogyaya bhavet. How can that person be healthy? That poison may not be fructifying to give any clear cause, any proper disease, but it is still there and it is still working against the entire metabolism of the body, and therefore you are not healthy. Tadvat, in the same way, ahanta api yoginaha muktyai. Yoginaha, for the person who is, for the seeker, muktyai, for in order to get liberated, it is not gained till there is even a bit of ahanta, even a bit of ego in a person. Right? So what is to be done? Ahamaha atyanta nivritya. Ahamaha, of the aham, of this ego, atyanta nivritya, by total annihilation, total nivritti, removal. Tatkrita nana vikalpa samṛtya. And then, not only we have to remove the ahaṃkāre, but tatkrita, created by this ahaṃkāre, nana vikalpa, various thoughts, various vrittis, modifications, activities, functions which are there, samṛtya, by restraining all of them, by controlling all of them, pratyak tattva vivekat, through the process of discrimination of pratyak tattva. Pratyak means inner, tattva means reality. By the discrimination of reality within me, means what? By understanding that I am this self, I am that Brahman which undergoes no modification. I am not this ego which is continuously changing. I am not this ego which is modifying and identifying with the body, mind, intellect and becoming something and making things happen. I am not this. By making this discrimination, distinction very clear, idam aham asmi iti tattvam vindate, then one realizes that I am this Brahman and not that ahaṃkāre. So far, not just in this life, but for all my lives, I have been thinking that I am this ahaṃkāre. I am this ego which is right now, which has got name Brahmachari Ved Chaitanya, which has got a body, a mind and intellect. And using this body, mind, intellect is, living in the world, taking up different roles, doing different activities. I have been considering myself to be this alone. But then, pratyak tattva vivekat, by discrimination, I realize this is not me. I am that supreme self which is absolutely unchanging. Right? So that is what we have to do. We have to remove totally the identification with ego and then also destroy all the modifications created by it. Then we have to realize the Supreme Self. Now, that is what now Shankaracharya is explaining. He says, see, one more important point. It is not just that we have identified with ahaṃkāre. That comes as step number 2. He says, even before that, we have given reality to ahaṃkāre. We have said, yes, there is something called as ahaṃkāre. You remember the story? Ahaṃkāre is like that Mani Mama, which doesn't belong to bride's side, doesn't belong to the groom's side, but is living happily. When somebody asks from this side, he tells, I am from that side. Somebody asks from that side, he tells, I am from this side. And lives in the family marriage house for 10-12 days. But the moment people start to find, who is this? The moment inquiry starts, he runs away. Ahaṃkāre neither belongs to body, mind, intellect, which are inert. It neither belongs to the self, which is sentient, which is consciousness, which has no modification. It belongs to neither side. It is somehow come about. But the moment we conduct inquiry, it vanishes. Ramana Maharshi also in Upadesh Sara says the same thing. You ask the question, idam aham kutaha bhavati chinvataha ai patatyaham nija vicharanam. He says, the moment you start inquiring what is this aham, from where this aham has come, because this aham cannot come from body, mind, intellect, which they are inert. How will they have ever the feeling of I? It cannot even come from the self, because self cannot have any modification. It cannot become anything. So the moment we realize that this aham is complete illogical, Gurudev used to call it the unholy wedlock of energy and matter. That is what is this ego. Unholy wedlock. Unholy marriage is there. Between what? Between the consciousness and inert body, mind, intellect. It has just come about. It is not real. It is not even there. See, this is my body. Okay, my body. Okay. My mind, when I am feeling certain emotions, I know this is my mind. Intellect also, I understand when I am trying to think, logical, deduction, reasoning. I know there is intellect which is in play and I can experience it. And after explanation, I have also understood that there is something called as Supreme Self, which is none of these. Isn't it? We have understood. From where is this ego coming? What is this ego? In this whole thing, what is this ego? When you say, I am Brahmachari Ved Chaitanya, or I am so and so, who? I means who? Which part of you is this? It is actually the reality that we give to the ego is our first problem. The moment ego is given reality, then it captures, it has got a lot of power to capture selfhood and then says, I am this. Right? So, this ego is not to be given reality. That's what he explains in the next verse number 305. We are coming back to Shikharini Chandas, very beautiful Chandas Shankaracharya uses here. Let us read. Ahaṃkāre kartaryahamiti matiṃ muñca sahasā. vikārātmanyātmapratiphalajuṣi svasthitimuṣi. yadadhyāsātprāptā janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā. pratīcaścinmūrtestava sukhatanoḥ saṃsṛtiriyam. ahaṃkāre kartaryahamiti matiṃ muñca sahasā vikārātmanyātmapratiphalajuṣi svasthitimuṣi. yadadhyāsātprāptā janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā. pratīcaścinmūrtestava sukhatanoḥ saṃsṛtiriyam. Wow, so beautiful. Words are beautiful, the meter is beautiful, and the thought is even more beautiful. What is he saying? He says, ahaṃkāre kartari, in that ego which is the doer. Aham iti matiṃ, the feeling that I am this ahaṃkāra, karta, doer, sahasā muñca, immediately give up. Immediately give up the feeling of I in this ahaṃkāra. Who is the doer? Who is this ahaṃkāra? Vikārātmani. So now you see there, vikārātmani, atmapratiphalajuṣi, svasthitimuṣi, ahaṃkāre. All in Saptami Vibhakti, it is connected with ahaṃkāre. What is this ahaṃkāra? Vikārātmani, in that which is continuously changing. Its nature is vikārātmano. It is of the nature of modification. At no point this ahaṃkāra is same. It is continuously changing. You see, when we started the class, what I was, and now 20 minutes later what I am different. I am not the same. I am not saying I am better, but I am different. Some knowledge has come in. Some thinking has happened, something has changed. Every single moment it is changing. In that BMI chart, if you remember, BMI chart of Gurudev, that body, mind, intellect are the instrument, equipment of action that we have. OET, objects, emotions, thoughts are the world. And these two things are continuously changing, and in these two things which are continuously changing, the PFT which is in between, which is the ego, the perceiver, feeler, thinker, the one who is the doer, karta. How can that remain constant? When the body is continuously changing, mind is continuously changing, and intellect is changing. The world of objects is continuously changing. Every single time I touch my watch, the watch changes, my body changes. Scientifically proven fact. We don't even have to go anywhere else. Isn't it? With every experience, my mind and my emotions are changed. My intellect, my thoughts are changing. Oh, that is what it means. Now I have understood one more word, one more concept. What is happening? My thoughts are changing. My intellect is changing. Now, in between these two things which are continuously changing, how can the doer remain same? Cannot. Why? Because the doer is also enjoyer. And with every single enjoyment, with every single experience, the doer changes. So it is vikārātma. Vikārātma is continuously modifying. That is the nature of ahaṃkāre. Atmapratiphalajuṣi. One, Atmapratijuṣi means which is endowed with. Or Juṣi also means which is lit up by. Lit up by what? Atmapratiphala. The reflection of self. Reflection of consciousness, which we say. You see, now Shankaracharya will only mention, okay? He has explained all these concepts before. Remember, there are three kinds of tadatmya identifications. We had seen earlier. Sahaja tadatmya, karmaja tadatmya, bhrantija tadatmya. Ahaṃkāras tadatmya with three things. Ahaṃkāras tadatmya, number one, with the reflection of consciousness is sahaja. Sahaja means born together. Means what? It is always together. You cannot separate them. The moment ahaṃkāra is there, reflection of consciousness has to be there along with it. The moment reflection of consciousness is there, ahaṃkāra has to be there with it. Sahaja tadatmya. Atmapratiphalajuṣi. It is always associated with, always lit up by this reflection of consciousness. Karmaja tadatmya is ahaṃkāra's tadatmya with body, which is karmaja, which is born by karma. So as long as prarabdha karma is there, its association with the body will remain. Prarabdha is over, it will drop the body, will take up the next body according to the next prarabdha. Karmaja tadatmya. And third, bhrantija tadatmya. Bhrantija tadatmya is the apparent identification between ahaṃkāra and the actual consciousness. Which is what? Bhrantija means what? It appears to be there, but it is not there. There is no tadatmya between ahaṃkāra and consciousness. Why? Because consciousness cannot have any identification with anything. But we feel it is there, and therefore the ahaṃkāra poses itself to be the real I. But actually, self has not become ahaṃkāra. Self has not even associated itself with ahaṃkāra. So these three kinds of tadatmyas we had seen. Now he is talking Atmapratiphalajuṣi, he is talking about that Sahaja tadatmya. What is this ahaṃkāra? This ahaṃkāra is that which is continuously changing, kartari, which is the doer, and which is also always associated with this Atmapratiphal. It's the reflection of self. Svasthitimuṣi. And then what? Muṣi, muñca dhatu. It takes away, it loots. It loots what? Svasthiti. This ahaṃkāra takes away our own real nature. We are not able to understand who am I, and therefore we misunderstand ourselves to be this jiva. So in this ahaṃkāra, you see now, ahaṃkāre is a subject. Subject means it is the main noun to which all these are adjectives. Kartari, in that which is the doer. Ahaṃkāra, who is the doer. Vikārātmani, which is continuously changing. Atmapratiphalajuṣi, in that which is always associated with reflection of self, reflection of consciousness. Svasthitimuṣi, which takes away our real nature. In this ahaṃkāra, which is of this nature, aham iti matiṃ sahasā muñca. Immediately, sahasā means immediately, without any delay, muñca, give up. Give up what? Aham iti matiṃ. Give up the feeling that I am this ego. That is what you do. Now what? Okay, so ahaṃkāre is explained in the first line. Now, yadadhyāsātprāptā, you see the change of noun now. The noun here is the last word. Iyam saṃsṛtiḥ. See? yadadhyāsātprāptā janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā, and then pratīcaścinmūrtestava sukhatanoḥ saṃsṛtiḥ iyam. Iyam saṃsṛtiḥ. Now what? The moment we have identified ourselves with ahaṃkāre, ego, then what? Adhyāsātprāptā. Because of this adhyāsa, because of this superimposition of ego on the self, by considering this ego to be the self, what has happened? Iyam saṃsṛtiḥ. I have got this samsara. Nobody has put me in samsara. Don't blame God for it. God, why did you put me in this samsara? God has not put us in samsara. It is we ourselves who have put ourselves into samsara. Why? By misidentifying ourselves, by not understanding our real nature, and therefore by thinking that I am this ego, we have put ourselves in this samsara. What is this samsara? janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā. Bahula, in many different kinds. Dukkha, sorrow. Full of sorrow. Full of sorrow of what? Jani, janma, birth. Mriti, mrityu, death. Jara, old age. We think that birth is a happy occasion. It is the happy occasion for all other people, not for the child. The child is suffering. That's why it continues to cry. It is very painful to separate out one human being from another human being. It is not a happy thing at all. The mother also goes through all the pain but still is happy because the birth of child has happened. But the child doesn't understand all that. Extremely painful. Mrityu, of course. Old age, of course. So all these things, dukkha bahula, various kinds of sorrows are there. What? That is what is samsara. How that samsara has come? Yat adhyāsātprāptā. It has come because of this adhyasa. That's why in Brahma Sutra also, the introductory commentary of Shankaracharya, which is there, he proves how this adhyasa is the main problem. That's why that section is called as Adhyasa Bhashya. And he starts entire Brahma Sutra commentary only, he starts with this. That there are two things which are absolutely opposite. Yushmad asmat pratyaya gocharayoho, vishaya vishayonoho, tamah prakashavad viruddha svabhavayoho. I don't even understand how they have come together, because one is like light, another is like darkness. One is of the nature of consciousness, the self. Another is inert body, mind, intellect. But how they have come together, how this ego is formed, how this adhyasa has happened, no idea. But that is the main problem that we all have. We are in this samsara, we are bound because of this adhyasa. Yad adhyāsātprāptā janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā iyam saṃsṛtiḥ. And this samsara, this samsṛti is feminine word for samsara only, that which continuously changes. Samyak sarati. This samsara has come to whom? Shankaracharya says, that is the sad part. pratīcaścinmūrtestava sukhatanoḥ tava. One who is of the nature of bliss, sukhatanoḥ, one who is the embodiment of bliss, to such a person this samsara has come. Duḥkhabahulā, which is of the nature of full of sorrow. To whom? Pratīcaścinmūrtestava, to the one who is this inner. Pratīcaścinmūrtestava means inner. Cinmūrtestava, to the murti, to the embodiment of chit, consciousness. Sukhatanoḥ, to the embodiment of bliss. And by saying pratīcaścinmūrtestava, of course, he is also saying that it is the sat. So to this Satchidananda Atma, this samsara has come, which is full of sorrow. How? Adhyāsātprāptā. How that adhyasa has come? Because I am considering myself to be the ego. And therefore, Shankaracharya says, kartaryahamiti aham iti matiṃ muñca sahasā. Please give up this mati, this feeling that I am this ahaṃkāre. See how beautifully Shankaracharya is explaining highest philosophy. We have been seeing all through this beautiful text Vivekachoodamani, and again we remember the words of Gurudev, where he says that Vivekachoodamani is the text where the philosophy has married poetry, and it is so true. He is explaining a thought which is so high, but in such a beautiful poetry. See the choice of words also. Even to study Sanskrit, such texts are very beautiful. You see, otherwise vikārātmanyātmapratiphalajuṣi, svasthitimuṣi, this is not even seen in poetry sometimes, when some kind of words are used here. Very beautifully Shankaracharya explains. So 3 things he has explained here, if you see carefully. 1, he is explaining what is the nature of ego. Ego is that which is continuously modifying, always endowed with the always endowed with the reflection of consciousness, and which is svasthitimuṣi, which takes away our real nature from us, and which is the doer. Ego. Samsara also he has explained. What is this bondage? What is this samsara? It is that which is gained by superimposition. Yadadhyāsātprāptā. Superimposition of ego on the self, which is of the nature, which is full of sorrow, of different kinds, of birth, death, old age, etc. That is what is samsara. And he has also explained what is the nature of the self. Right? The self is pratīcaścinmūrtestava, inner, janimṛtijarāduḥkhabahulā, sukhatanoḥ, of the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss. So this self has, we can't even say has become, but we have forgotten that we are the self, and we are considering ourselves to be the ego, which is continuously changing, and thus we have samsara, which is full of sorrow. Right? Now, he strengthens this concept in the next verse. Similar thought is given. Let us read. Verse number 306. sadaikarūpasya cidātmano vibhor ānandamūrteranavadyakīrteḥ naivānyathā kvāpyavikāriṇaste vināhamadhyāsamamuṣya saṃsṛtiḥ sadaikarūpasya cidātmano vibhor ānandamūrteranavadyakīrteḥ naivānyathā kvāpyavikāriṇaste vināhamadhyāsamamuṣya saṃsṛtiḥ. What does he say? Sadaikarūpasya. For that self, now you will see all the words in the first line are in 6th case, are in Shashti Vibhakti. Is talking about that self. So, for that self who is of this nature. What nature? Sadaikarūpasya, which is always eka, which is ever one. There is no duality. It is absolutely one. It never changes. Sadaikarūpasya cidātmano. It is that self which is of the nature of consciousness. It is never separate from its nature. Of that self. Vibhor, of that who is omnipresent. Vibhor, of that self who is all pervasive, omnipresent. Ānandamūrteḥ, of that self who is of the nature of Ananda, bliss. Last Visheshana, Anavadyakīrteḥ, one who is of the Anavadya kirti. Kirti means glory. Anavadya means unsullied, untainted. There is no any touch of anything which is not of that nature. It is unsullied glory. It never becomes impure, not even for a moment. That is the nature of the self. Means what? How much ever we consider the self to have become ahaṃkāre and doing so many things, good, bad, or otherwise, punya, papa, it never even for a moment becomes impure. This is the nature of the self. The self is always one of the nature of consciousness, of the nature of bliss, of the nature of all pervasive consciousness, and then what? Ānandamūrteranavadyakīrteḥ, of that self, for that self which is of this nature, which is of unsullied glory. What happened? Amuṣya saṃsṛtiḥ. One more adjective comes in the second line. Avikāriṇaste te. Avikāriṇah, the one which is having no vikara, which is having no modification. For such a self, and that is not something else. Te, tava, yours. You are of this nature. For you, amuṣya saṃsṛtiḥ, this samsara has come. For you who is of this nature, suddenly this lower samsara, amuṣya, you see, technically amuṣya is just a pronoun, this saṃsṛti. But it also is to indicate te. For you who is of this nature is amuṣya saṃsṛti. This lower kind of saṃsṛti, this nature has come to you. Why? Vināhamadhyāsam anyatha na eva kvāpi. Lot of rearrangement of words is required. Vināhamadhyāsam, ahamadhyāsam vina, without the adhyasa, superimposition of aham. Aham here means ego. Without the superimposition of the ego on the self, without this, naivānyathā kvāpi, not by any other reason this saṃsṛti has come, this samsara has come. The samsara has come to this glorious self only because of ahamadhyasa, only because of the superimposition of the ego. There is no other reason, there is no other cause of samsara. Right? So, he has deduced it logically that everything has come, this entire samsara, identification, all of that has come because of ahamadhyasa. Ahamadhyasa means superimposition of the ego of I-ness on the self. In other words, the small I posing to be the big I. Ego posing to be the self. That is what has caused this entire samsara. And therefore, what you should do? Shankaracharya says, therefore, you please destroy this ahaṃkāre. How does he say? Let us see. Another verse, another example. Yeah. tasmādahaṃkāramimaṃ svaśatruṃ bhokturgale kaṇṭakavatpratītam vichchidya vijñāna mahāsina sphutam bhunksvātma samrajya sukham yatheshtam. tasmādahaṃkāramimaṃ svaśatruṃ bhokturgale kaṇṭakavatpratītam vichchidya vijñāna mahāsina sphutam bhunksvātma samrajya sukham yatheshtam. What? Tasmat, therefore. Tasmat, we know that the topic is ending. So whatever he has given so far in this topic, he is concluding by saying tasmat, therefore. Therefore what? Imam ahaṃkāram svaśatruṃ vichchidya. That is how. The other things are only adjectives for that. This ahaṃkāra, which is svaśatru, which is your real enemy. Your real enemy is not your neighbor, or that brother who did not give me property. No. Or that unknown person who created so much of dominoes effect that because of which I am caught up in this. No. Your real shatru is this ahaṃkāra, which is posing to be you. It is the one who is misrepresenting you in front of the whole world. You are of the nature of that supreme bliss, but he is posing yourself to be the beggar of joy, going to each and every object, each and every person, relationship, and asking, give me little joy, give me little joy, give me little joy. It is the one who is your real shatru, real enemy. Who is that? This ahaṃkāra. He says, bhokturgale kaṇṭakavatpratītam. This ahaṃkāra is like kaṇṭaka. Kaṇṭaka is thorn, stuck in the throat of bhokta, one who is eating. See, sometimes, no, because we eat something cold, etc., in the weather, our throat little bit gets swollen, little bit. And the moment that throat gets swollen, even to drink water becomes very painful thing. Why? Because it has to pass through that throat, no? Now you imagine there is a thorn stuck in that throat. So every single time anything passes through that, it keeps scratching your throat. Bhokturgale kaṇṭakavatpratītam. And then what? Then you cannot eat anything and enjoy. See, it is not because the food is not good. It is because of the thorn which is stuck in your own throat. See, for a moment we must appreciate. See the choice of example you see. Shankaracharya is using here to say that the problem of entire samsara lies with ourselves. Ahaṃkāra. There is nothing wrong with the world. So by the time the food comes up to my mouth, it is all perfect. When it passes through my own system, it creates pain. Food is not responsible for it. One who cooked is not responsible for it. You yourself are responsible for it. Oh, Swamiji, nowadays the world is so bad. World is same. Gurudev always used to tell one story. I might have told in the class also. The story of two brothers. There were two brothers and both of them got married. Some of you are moving your head, means you remember the story, which means I have told. Very good. I think in Vivekachoodamani sessions only, Gurudev has explained this story also, that there were two brothers. Both got married. And the younger brother somehow suddenly started to get food poisoning. And he used to vomit. Every time after food, he used to vomit. So the wife of this younger brother, she said, there is something wrong. The food is cooked by Bhabi, by the wife of elder brother. I think she is adding poison in your food. You see, one woman always understands what the other woman is thinking. Men should not get into that at all. You never know what is happening. They exactly understand. So she says, I think this is what is happening, and therefore what you should do, tomorrow when you sit for lunch, just before you start, you swap the plates. You take your brother's plate for you and you give your plate to your brother. So, because if she is adding poison, she will not add poison to her own husband. So, you do this. Brother says, shut up. Stupid things you are telling me. Nothing like. But that day also he vomits, then he says that maybe I should listen to my wife. So, next day he listens to the wife and takes that plate and gives this plate. Okay, elder brother doesn't understand. He says, what is wrong with you? You are still behaving like a kid. In childhood you used to do all these things. No, he says, no, you eat that, I will eat this. He eats, again he vomits. So then he says that no, that means nobody is adding any poison. Let me go to doctor. So he goes to the doctor, and in Gurudev's dramatic style, no, he says that he will go to the doctor, and doctor will say, open your mouth, and close your mouth. How are you still alive? Why? So much of bad smell is coming from your mouth. There is such a big ulcer. How are you still alive? So there is an ulcer in the mouth. Whatever food you eat, the ulcer adds poison to the food, and then it goes to the stomach. There is no problem with the food. There is no problem with the world. Stop blaming world for your sorrow. Oh, my wife is like that. My children are like that. My in-laws are like that. My neighbor is like that. My boss is like that. None of them can create sorrow for you. It is our own ego which is creating sorrow. Even a happy situation, when it passes through our ego, becomes a sad situation. The poison is added, the pain is added by us, by this ahaṃkāre only, which is like the thorn stuck in the throat. Therefore, what you have to do? Vichidya, having destroyed. Vijnana maha asina, by the great sword of experience, the self-realization. Vijnana maha asina vichidya, sputam, clearly. Here that maha asina can also be taken as that instrument of the doctor, which is very deep, which is used to cut that thorn. In the olden days, they must have used such instruments to remove the thorn, etc., which is stuck in the throat. Now, having destroyed, having removed this thorn, then what? Bhungshva. Bhungshva, enjoy. What should you enjoy? Atma samrajya sukham. Sukham, the bliss of Atma Samrajya, the sovereignty of the self. Bliss of the sovereignty of the self. Yatha ishtam. Yatheshtam bhungshva. You enjoy as you please. The moment that is removed, then what? You enjoy eating anything. Whatever comes in front of you, you take and eat. Till that time, even simple water is painful. Then you are saying that, okay, then I should not eat roti, I should not eat bread, I should take rice and put it in the milk, and it should become so soft that it should just pass from all sides. Why? Because that thorn is still there. But the moment that thorn is removed, ahaṃkāre is removed, then now go. Oh, go and enjoy whatever you want in this whole world. Why? Because there is only one thing, Atma Samrajya, the sovereignty of the self alone is there. There is nothing else, and therefore you just enjoy. Destroy ego and then enjoy. Right? Vijnana mahasina vichidya Atma Samrajya sukham bhungshva. Having destroyed the ego with the knowledge of the self, then you enjoy the bliss of the self. But only destruction of ego is not sufficient. There is something more to be done. Oh, Vedji, this is what I don't like in Vedanta. You know, they say something and then they add something. But there is a reason for that. What will Bhashyakara do? He doesn't have option. He has to tell you the truth. No? So listen to what he is telling. Oh, what is he saying? Let us see. Verse number 308. Tato'hamādervinivartya vrittim. Santyaktaragah paramarthalabhat. Tushnim samasvatma sukhanubhutya. Purnātmana brahmani nirvikalpah. Tato'hamādervinivartya vrittim. Santyaktaragah paramarthalabhat. Tushnim samasvatma sukhanubhutya. Purnātmana brahmani nirvikalpah. Tatah means thereafter. Thereafter what? After having destroyed ego, don't just sit. What? Ahaṃkāre vrittim vinivartya. Vinivartya, having turned away from. Nivartya, visheshena nivartya, having completely turned away from what? Ahaṃkāre vrittim. This activities, modifications of ahamādi, of this ego, etc. This is a very important point Shankaracharya brings here. You see, in in Prakarana Granthas, there is a explanation of concepts which are less known. Right? Here is one such concept. There will be many concepts which are well known, which he will explain in Prakarana Granthas, but there will also be explanation of certain concepts, certain things which are less known, which are not that discussed, in other texts. This is one of that concept that Bhagavan Shankaracharya is explaining here. What is he saying here? Generally, so far what we have understood, detach from the ahaṃkāre, understand your real nature as self, okay, done. But here he says, after you have detached from ahaṃkāre, you have to do one more thing as a precaution. What is that precaution? Don't give any importance to any modification of that ego. Ego is gone, but its modifications might still be there. Don't give importance to them. Don't pay attention to them. Don't get caught up with them. He'll give the reason why he is saying like this in the next verse. We'll see at that time. But here he is saying, after destruction of ego also, tataha, thereafter, what you have to do? Don't go towards, means turn away from all the modifications of the ego. Ahaṃkāre vrittim vinivartya. And for that, in order for you not to go, what you have to be? Santyakta ragaha. You have to become a person who has santyakta, totally given up, renounced raga attachment. Santyakta ragaha is the karta here in the sentence. Santyakta ragaha san. By becoming a person who has totally given up attachment. How? Paramartha labhat. By gaining paramartha, by gaining that supreme, now you have given up any attachment to anything other than the self. By becoming like this, nirvikalpaha san, see the last word of the verse, nirvikalpaha, being totally free from duality. How? Swatma sukhanubhutya purnatmana brahmani nirvikalpaha. He has experienced the total oneness in the Brahman. How? Swa atma sukha anubhutya. By experiencing the enjoyment of the bliss of the self. Swa atma sukha anubhutya. By the enjoyment of the bliss of the self, purnatmana, by experiencing or by being that purnatma, by being that infinite self, what? Tushnim samasva. Tushnim samasva, just be. Don't do anything. Now that you have destroyed the ego, don't go behind the modifications. Don't. Now you just be. We were just seeing the concept that agreed the main problem is adhyasa. Adhyasa is considering ahaṃkāre to be the self. But that problem has arisen from giving reality to aham, to the ahaṃkāre. Isn't it? Step number one is we are giving the reality. And then by the power of ahaṃkāre, it captures our selfhood and it says, I am everything. See, in management also, they speak of this. Sometimes we give power to wrong person. And the moment you give power to that wrong person will capture the entire system and will run the entire system as per his or her wish. Isn't it? There is one very interesting dialogue in one of the TV series which says that it is difficult to put leash on the dog once you have put crown on its head. Once you have given the power to it, then now it is very difficult to control. By giving reality to ego, we have given power to the ego. Now what? Now ego uses that power and takes the entire selfhood. It just doesn't say that I exist. It says I am everything. It just doesn't say that there is body, mind, intellect, there is ahaṃkāre also. No, it says I am you who is having this body, mind, intellect. So though having separated ourselves from the ego, the reality given to the ego is still there, and therefore it can come back at any time. Therefore, don't pay any attention to its vritti, to its modifications. Even after having destroyed the ahaṃkāre, vinivartya vrittim, turn away from the modifications. Don't go behind them. Why? Because if you pay attention, it is the hood of the snake. It will come back. Ahaṃkāre will rise again. Why? Why the topic of ego is explained in such a elaboration? The reason is it is extremely powerful and it is extremely dangerous. Therefore, Shankaracharya warns us again and again, be careful of this ego. That is what he says in the next verse, that even after you have uprooted this ego, it can come back. That is why it is said that even after the destruction of the superimposition, don't pay attention to the modification of the ego. Why? Because the superimposition will return. Let us see verse number 309. samūlakṛtto'pi mahānaham punaha vyullekhitasya yadi chetasakshanam sanjīvya vikshepa shatam karoti nabhasvata pravrishivaridō yathā samūlakṛtto'pi mahānaham punaha vyullekhitasya yadi chetasakshanam sanjīvya vikshepa shatam karoti nabhasvata pravrishivaridō yathā. Again example to explain a point. What? Shankaracharya is different level only. What does he say? He says, samūlakṛtto'pi. Krittaha. Kriddhatu, kridan, krindana. That kriddhatu, from which krindana. Krindana means to cut. Samūlakṛtto'pi. Even if it is cut from the mula, from its root. Even if that ego is totally gone, means even from its root you have uprooted it, you have removed it. Mahānaham, this aham is mahan, it is very strong. Punaha vyullekitaha. Vyullekitaha, it is revived. Again, punaha. Yadi, how it is, sat means it is revived again. How? Chetasa, by the mind. Kshanam, even for a moment in the mind, if you remember the experience of the pleasures, etc., even for a moment, ahaṃkāre will return. You have uprooted it, but it will return. It will be revived. And then what? Sanjīvya, having been reborn. Vikshepa shatam karoti. It creates hundreds of vikshepas, hundreds of modifications, hundreds of mischiefs, distractions. That's what it creates. Like what? Example is, yatha, just as pravrishi in the rainy season, nabhasvata varidaha. Varidaha means varim dadati iti varidaha. The clouds which give water, the water bearing clouds, nabhasvata, by the wind. Nabha means sky. Nabhaswat means wind. Nabhaswata, Tritiya Vibhakti. By that wind, even when in the rainy season the clouds are gone, they will come back by the wind. Don't be happy that, oh, now the sky is clean. Within a moment, water-bearing clouds will return and it will start to rain. You think that the ego is gone, but the moment you give even little bit of attention, the mind will revive the ego and ego will return with all of its hundreds of mischiefs, distractions. Vedji, one doubt. What? Giving attention means what? You said that after removing ego, if you give attention means what? Explained in the next verse. Let us see and we will conclude with that for today. Verse number 310. Nigrihya śatrorahamo'vakāśaḥ क्वचिन्न देयो विषयानुचिन्तया स एव सञ्जीवनहेतुरस्य प्रक्षीणजम्बीरतरोरिवाम्बु जम्बीरतर निगृह्य शत्रोरहमोऽवकाशः क्वचिन्न देयो विषयानुचिन्तया स एव सञ्जीवनहेतुरस्य प्रक्षीणजम्बीरतरोरिवाम्बु. Yet another example. What is he saying? Shatroho ahamaha, of this aham, which is the shatru, which is already established fact now. Avakāśaḥ nigrihya, having conquered, having overpowered. Avakāśaḥ, its existence. Rest. Avakāśaḥ means it is resting for some time. Having conquered, that means not letting this ahaṃkāre to be there, even if you have uprooted it. This ahaṃkāre, even then, kvachit na deyah. You should not give what? Vishaya anuchintaya. You should not give your mind to what? Vishaya anuchintana. Anuchintana means repeated thinking. Vishaya means sense objects. Don't think about the sense objects. Why? Because that is the trigger point. You will think about the sense objects, the desire will rise with the desire, the mind will revive the ego will return and will create hundreds of modifications to get that desired object. Now having uprooted the ego, don't give importance to Vishaya Anuchintana. Don't let your mind think about Vishaya, sense pleasures. Why? Saha eva sanjīvana hetuhu asya. Because that Vishaya Anuchintana alone is sanjīvana hetuhu asya. For this ego, it is the cause of revival. It is the cause of rebirth of the ego. Why do you think our rishis always stayed in places where there were less distractions? You think they were not sure about their mind? No, they didn't want to take any chance. Can we not practice this here? We can. But why to take chance? You remember earlier Shankaracharya in Vivekachoodamani itself has said that this Vishaya is worse than Visha. It is worse than the black cobra. Why? Visham nihanti bhoktaram. Because the poison kills a person who has consumed that poison. It's taken either through mouth or through any other part. Vishaya drishtya eva. But Vishaya, even by a look, it captures, it takes away, it kills you. And that's why at that time Shankaracharya said that you keep this Vishaya far, like you keep the potassium cyanide far from the reach of children. You don't keep it next to the salt bottle. In the kitchen, salt bottle is there, potassium cyanide, poison also is there. No. That poison is required to kill the other beings which are disturbing in your family. That is true. No, not human beings. I mean the insects, etc. For them it is required, but that is the only use, and therefore it is not to be kept somewhere where easily children can find or easily we can mistake. Keep it far, locked up. So even after having uprooted the ego, don't give way to vishayanuchintana. Don't allow mind to think about the sense pleasures again. Why? Because saeva sanjivana heturasya. That alone is the cause of revival of the ego. Ego will be revived and it will create vikshepa shatam. It will create hundreds of modifications. Right? Example he gives, prakshina jambira taroho ambu iva. Iva, like what? Ambu, rain, water. Ambu means water, here it means rain. By that water, jambira means lemon. Jambira taroho, the lemon tree. Prakshina, which is dried up. If you have seen the lemon tree which is dried up, there is not even a single leaf on that lemon tree. There will only be that bark is there and small branches, extremely thin branches. But the moment it rains, it revives itself. It will look like it is dead. The tree is dead. But no. See, Shankaracharya's observation plus the capacity to bring correct example for correct point. He says, just as water or rain is the cause of revival of this dried up lemon tree, in the same way, vishayanuchintana, thinking of sense pleasures, is the cause of revival of the dead ego. Already destroyed ego will be revived by vishayanuchintana. In the ladder of fall that we see in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it starts with this vishayanuchintana. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat buddhinasha buddhinashat pranashyati. The entire ladder of fall, entire thing starts with vishayanuchintana. So we have to give up vishayanuchintana at the beginning also, and we have to give it up till the end. You see, even after destruction of ego, you are not allowed to do vishayanuchintana. Don't. Why? Because it will revive the ego. Right? Therefore, don't pay any attention to the modification even after the destruction of ego. Right? How can you say that vishayanuchintana is the cause of revival of ego? Next point will be explained in the next verse. We will see in the next session. Okay? How can you say that vishayanuchintana revives? That he explains. Logical person. He doesn't leave anything just for that sake. Beautiful. Let us conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.